Morning, everyone.
Good
Morning.
morning. How are you?
I am nervous. This feels like a jury trial.
Well, if you become a judge, you should be handling it. So, with that.
I'm gonna glance over there and see if I know anybody on board there.
So, thank you for completing the application. I meant to say that before. It is a task in and of itself, and so I appreciate your taking the time and effort to do that. Obviously, at the end of the day, the question becomes, what makes you the guy or the lady? Will be the guy if the governor would appoint. Why should he appoint you?
Well, first of all, again, good morning. I'm Alex Sharp, and I am gonna treat this just like a jury trial. I'm gonna convince you in the time that I'm allotted to see if you feel I'm worthy to go up to the governor's consideration. I'm not your traditional attorney walking in here. I haven't had I didn't go out of high school. In fact, I didn't even graduate high school. I don't think that was a question on the application, but I didn't make it out of high school. I got a GED when I was very young. I started working, and I joined the military. You had to have a GED to get the military, so I applied myself and got that. And I was in the Army Reserves, military police. And in my younger years, before 21, I was working at a place called Pizza Hut. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. And I came to the realization that this is really not a career choice, and that I needed to do something different. And one of the other fellow employees there told me about the police academy, and I moved on and went to the police academy. I thought it would be a really cool job. So, remember, I'm one of your older candidates, probably the oldest, I think. And no, maybe?
Oh, in this group,
Close,
yes.
Okay, in this group. So, and I'm throwing that Pizza Hut thing out there because I'm going to circle back to that and throw that in as another issue in my life here when we get to it. But I started out at the Black Police Department, which is the center of Putnam County. My family moved to Putnam County when I was in the 5th grade, and we've never left there. A lot of my siblings escaped, but I didn't escape. I made it my home, and I really care deeply about it. And starting out as a police officer was a very eye-opening experience for me. I experienced a lot of different individuals, different cultures, different ways, different people that I hadn't been exposed to before. And I made a really good career of it. I moved up in the ranks. I did every job that you could possibly think of at the Police Department. They did have a slight crime issue. I think they're a population of 10,000. They still are. And I still remember one year they had 10 homicides in one year. I worked my way all the way up to, and at one point I was in charge of investigations. I did all their major crimes. I dabbled in technology. We had a really good police chief, a gentleman by the name of Bill Delinsky. And he really felt education was important to the officers. He felt that if the officers were educated, they would do a better job. And I have to agree with him. So he started a tuition program at the Black Police Department. I keep saying Black Police Department, apologies. We'll shorten that to PPD. But whereas the city would pay for 1 college credit for every 2 that you earned. So he encouraged the men and women there to get their college degrees. It took me a long time. It took me all through the 90s up into 2001. But I eventually arrived at that place where I had my associate degree and my bachelor's degree. Unfortunately, Chief Delinsky moved on. There was another chief that came in. I didn't like his management style, and I saw it as a way to segue out of the police work, and I ran for sheriff, which is ironic where I work now, but I did want that position. I felt I could do a better job for my community as a sheriff, and I wasn't very happy with how he was running the agency. I did make sheriff, and if any of you guys have ever been involved in elections, sometimes after an election, if you don't get the spot, you're kind of shunned for a few years. So I had to turn to a different career, and my lovely wife, who I married in 2002 on February the 14th, which tomorrow will be my anniversary. Smart move. I don't ever forget our anniversary. I did forget her birthday one time. She still reminds me of that, but in fairness, that was my first year of law school.
Yes, she will each year.
Yes, and we opened up our own real estate office, Hale Real Estate Inc. Those of you that remember the 2000s, 2003 to 2007, real estate was really, really good. And I had some business partners, some other attorneys, and some businessmen. And we did quite well for ourselves. I invested that money. I didn't raise my standard of living. I tried to improve our downtown area. I bought several small commercial buildings in the downtown area, rehabbed them, and I stayed active in my community. And then another good friend of mine, who happened to be a prosecutor at the time, who actually taught one of my college classes, he told me he was going to run for state attorney. And I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive, Mr. Larissa. Actually, I call him RJ. And I said, well, if you run for state attorney and you get it, I'm going to go get my law degree, and I want to be a prosecutor. And lo and behold, he did become the state attorney. And I went to law school in 2008. I did my summers when they would let us. The first year I did Florida Coastal. They wouldn't let you do summer classes the first year. But I graduated early and took my bar in February 2012. And I promptly called him up and said, hey, I said, I am now a full-fledged attorney, and I need a job. And I did almost miss that hook for you guys. In the meantime, in addition to real estate, I opened a small pizzeria in Palatka in the downtown area where we sold pizza. Still there today, ran it for 15 years. Actually, my wife ran it for 15 years after I started it. I'm good at that. And it's still in the downtown area as a viable restaurant. So that pizza training turned out really good for me. But he put me down in Daytona for my first year. I think somebody took over my old office. And after the first year was over, he moved me back up into Putnam. I enjoyed it. I was a misdemeanor attorney for maybe, I want to say, maybe a little under a year. And he moved me up to the felony line. I started doing trials. I really enjoyed the trials. Didn't enjoy the nervousness of it, because that feeling's coming back to me right now. I look at all y'all's faces. But I really enjoyed that. We had an issue with the sheriff's office at the time up there, and RJ asked me to step in and do all the drug cases for the entire county. So there'd be a central point of it. And I took that over, and I think I did a very good job at doing that. I've got 31 trials. I think I put those in my application. I didn't do a lot of misdemeanor trials, but I did excel at my felony trials. Had some personal issues happen in 2016. I lost a son, and it was we'll just say it was a milestone moment in my life. And the sheriff at the time, the new sheriff, Sheriff Deloach, came to me and asked me if I would like to be a general counsel. And I told him that I would. I said I had to check with RJ first, so he promptly called him right there on the phone in the car and got him on the speakerphone, and they were fine with it. And so in 2017, I started my second, I call it my legal career, as general counsel with the Putnam County Sheriff's Office, and that's where I'm at currently.
Mr. Sharp, talk to me about the risk protection orders. How many have you filed? How do you figure out if you're going to file those? Because there is some discretion kind of in that process.
The way our agency is set up to do those, sir, is first it has to be initiated by the officer. We kind of set it up as a check and balances. There's certain criteria in the statute, and the officer has to feel that the criteria is there. His supervisor then looks at it, which is whatever the shift supervisor is, whether it be a lieutenant or a captain, and then they'll forward it to our criminal investigations division. And then they will have to make a decision whether they go forward on it then. And then they'll give me a packet. And then it's my determination whether we make the final decision to file those. So we put a lot of, the Second Amendment is very important to people. and we put a lot of vetting in that to make sure that we don't arbitrarily take somebody's firearm, and we make sure those procedures are followed. At first, I did quite a few of them, but I do believe they're having an effect. I do probably now about one a month, and they're a mixed bag. Some of them are people that want to self-harm themselves. They use a firearm, or they allege they're going to use a firearm to self-harm. Generally, most people don't have a problem with that. The other ones they have underlying criminal charges, and it very rarely do we ever go to a hearing on them now. At first, I did go to several hearings in the beginning of the first year of them, but now I'm generally able to, well, for one, it's a civil process, so they're not entitled to be appointed an attorney, but I'm allowed to reach out to them if they don't have an attorney representing them on that. And I explain what the goal is. I give them the factual history of why that statutory language was enacted as a law, the Marjorie Stone Park High School shooting and so forth. And generally they stipulate, sir. There's really no issue. Really haven't had one where somebody had really fought with me about keeping their guns.
So just a little clarification. So if somebody has pending charges, is it the policy or is it your practice to file these risk protections, or is it discretionary?
Well, they're ultimately always discretionary. I make the final determination whether there's enough probable cause to go forward on them. But yes, sometimes we have neighbors that shoot each other, and one of them might be charged with aggravated assault. He probably doesn't have a criminal past. I will step in while the criminal process is going on, and I will file this, and I'll reach out to them and say, do you mind, like relinquishing your gun rights for a year? And, with the caveat, your criminal process is probably going to take far, far longer to conclude itself. And their they end on their own. There's nothing a person has to do. They end on their own.
What about,
Alex,
go ahead, Mark.
yes, Alex, how you doing?
I didn't see you up there, Mark. Good morning.
Good morning. Glad to be here. Do me a favor, would you expand on your issues with Chief Getchell? And then I assume the lawsuit in the city of Blackfoot was related to that?
It was, sir. When I decided to run for sheriff, I was a much younger man, probably about 22 years ago. And as I told the board here, sitting here, I didn't like his management style. And if I can sum it up and encapsulate it, I told him that if I made sheriff, that I was going to dissolve the Black Police Department and have the sheriff provide law enforcement services for the city, because I didn't feel he was doing an adequate job. He did attempt to file charges against me in the middle of the campaign. I have provided documentation to all of you. Those charges were all, well, I can't say they're charges, it was a complaint affidavit. They were all dismissed, and they were subsequently, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement found there was no basis for them as well. And again, I hope you all understand that this was 20 some odd years ago. And I've learned that you don't sue people on principle. That's not the way to go. And I did file a suit against the Black police chief himself and the city of Blackfoot. And it was unsuccessful. I believe the ruling, and I wasn't an attorney at the time, but the ruling that was established was that Chief Getchell was not the policymaker for the city, that the city manager was, which was a big hole in our whole case. Is that satisfactory, sir?
Thank you.
You're very welcome, sir. It's good to see you.
Been floating around, you just hadn't seen me.
What about, you're very active on social media. Is that something that you're willing to give up if you are selected?
I think in today's climate, if this board would allow me to go forward and the Governor DeSantis would choose me, I do believe that my social media days would have to come to an end. I am pretty vocal on that. Hypocrisy always bothers me when I see it, and so I try not to be too overtly, I don't really know what word I'm looking for, but I try not to cross that line on social media. But I can see as a judiciary that that would not probably be an allowable practice to have that sort of social media if I was allowed to become a judge.
What's your comfort level? There's been a lot of executive branch aspects of your career. And what's your comfort level of going from the executive branch to the judicial branch?
Well, I think my diversity as a business owner and from being in the executive branch as a police officer and the general counsel would be an asset to the judiciary. I think, I have a one golden rule: treat people as I would want to be treated. And I think that we tend to forget that when we're elevated in positions of power or a position of authority. And I think with the amount of life experience I would bring to the table, I think I could do that job very well. And I think I would be very comfortable at doing it in my county. I heard some beeps going off.
It's just the Zoom.
Okay.
Anything else from anyone else? Anything else you'd like to add?
Pete's voice is still there. I don't own it, but it's really, really good pizza.
As good as when you were running it?
I won't say that, but she does a very good job. And again, I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity of seeing me and allowing me to participate in this process and bringing back those old butterflies when I would get up, for that jury closing, knowing that I had to swing it. But again, thank you. I do appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.